start of the early teens came with day 11. I decided to head up to the surface and get a look around, refresh my memory what I was working with, and I could see I still had my crop farm, and I had a bunch of animals still. Cows. There was a second pig wandering around where the first one was. So I thought I'd lead him into the pig pen, and, yeah, figured that way. Easy way to get a second pig. Looks like the sheep are doing good. Picked up a loose egg and checked on the chickens. Got rid of the extra chicken that was wandering around. And then decided to head back inside after checking on the crop farm real quick. Yeah, like I said, headed back down inside and headed for the main room. Wanted to make sure I had everything organized the way I wanted it. Inventory cleaned out the way I wanted, and then headed down towards the mine. Figured now would be a good time to get started digging out a back room, a storage room for the mine. There was going to be a lot of need for storage if I got busy with the mining. Wasn't sure what I might find while I was digging, but I got busy on it. And I remembered, as I was working, just why I prefer enchanted tools over non-enchanted tools. Digging through deep slate is a pain when you're using just basic diamond pickaxe. Because even though it is supposed to be the best overworld tool, diamond pickaxes are not very efficient when they don't have enchantments. But it wasn't long before I had the room that I wanted cleared out for using as a storage room. So, made some chests, and got busy putting them in place to make sure I would have all the storage I would need, at least for now. Which, I didn't expect to need very much, obviously. I mean, come on, I was just getting started. What use was I really going to have for a whole boatload of chests? But with the chests and storeroom set up, I decided it was time to actually get busy with the proper digging. So I got to mining. Again, reminded why I preferred had enchanted tools over not enchanted tools. And that I would need to keep my torches close at hand. Didn't really find a whole lot besides a bit of redstone, as you can see. Turned out to be pretty much the only thing I ended up finding down there in that tunnel. So, I ended up deciding to focus on setting up a water source, a permanent water source down there in the mine hub. Took a couple of trips up and down, or took a trip up and down the stairs to get some more water to fill in the infinite water source that I was working on, but once I had that in place, I knew it would be good to go forever. After that, I went back up to the surface and decided to go take a look around, go wander and travel for a bit. Didn't go very far at first, but it didn't take long for me to get a little ambitious. I decided to sail down the river, and I found this cave. Was not expecting to find a cave like this. Looked kind of interesting, but it was getting late, so I decided to sleep. The dawn of day 12, though, I immediately went into the cave to start lighting up the edge and get a look around, and started gathering some deep slate that I could see, too. Wasn't really looking to get a lot of deep slate, but I figured any little amount would help, and it'd also make it easier to move around along the edges of this cave and get it lit up. Last thing I wanted was a bunch of mobs to come crowding up behind me if I had my back turned to a dark area, you know? But I quickly realized the cave was bigger and darker than I was ready to deal with, and headed out. I did not want to risk getting killed by surprise from the dark. Came to a dead end in the river, and decided to start climbing up a mountain. Well, I think it was really more of a hill. but the view I found at the top, oh my gosh, just look at all those cherry blossom trees. It's awesome. So I decided to make my way over towards those cherry blossom trees and found a pink sheep. These used to be very rare, but I ended up ignoring the sheep and focusing in on chopping up some cherry wood to take back with me. My hope was to get some of the cherry saplings while I was at it, and I also decided to go up the hill a little further, up into the snowy mountaintop type area. I was a little cautious at first, though, because I couldn't tell where the snow layers would end and where powdered snow might begin. And I did not want to fall into that. But once I got up to the top, I decided, let's drop some water and see if it opens up any caves or anything, clearing away powdered snow. I didn't see any cave openings form, but I did see the water go cascading down the hill, and it was honestly really, really satisfying. So I ended up placing some more water, only to realize after I did that it was going to wash downhill and possibly wash away any cherry saplings that were down there. So I rushed down, got what I could, and then decided to head onward. There was a lot more world to explore, and I was eager to do it. Stopping, as you can see, only for a little bit of coal and iron. Figure it was a good idea to keep that stuff in good supply. I ended up going back down the hill. Wasn't sure there was really anything else to find on that hill, but of course, what goes up and what goes down, they must go the other way. Ended up climbing another hill, getting a bit of a walk in, getting a little look around in the process. Saw some dark oak trees and spruce in the distance. Decided to keep on wandering, keep on trekking, and see what there was to see. Had some nice looking areas in the process, but I just was really focused in on going as far as I could without getting too far away from my base. I didn't want to be too far away from the cave, but I wanted to explore as much as I could, so I kept on marching and marching on through the spruce taiga woods until finally it got to a point where it was just getting way too dark and I was ready to go to bed. Morning of day 13, I immediately got back on the move. Paused to look at some foxes, though. I still wish these guys could be tamed. But anyway, I set off, started climbing up some more hills, just trudging along as best I could with everything that I had on me, which wasn't a whole lot at all. But gradually I started making my way back towards my base, figuring it might be a good idea to do so. Though, as you saw there, I saw a wolf skin that I hadn't seen before. But I also ended up doing a little bit of hunting as I went, killing off any cows or pigs I saw. But it wasn't long before I made my way back home and started down into the base itself to put away all the stuff I'd collected. Those cherry blossom trees, the cherry saplings, I had some ideas of things to do with them later, but I wasn't sure when I would get around to working with those ideas. So I put it all away, including the little bit of iron I picked up. And then I decided to go up topside and look around some more, and set off on another little bit of a trek. I ended up doubling back and crossing the river to see what I could find on the other side, if anything. Found a ravine, was a little curious about it, but decided I wasn't in the mood to explore that, so I just kept on marching. And marching and climbing over the trees and doing the best I could to put some distance between me and the base, hoping to find some goodies. Even found this water and started to set out sailing on it until I realized I had already gone that way before. That was where I had found my kelp during the last session. So I doubled back, found a small cave, peeked in, thought it might be shallow, but then I realized, nope, that's big. So I ran away. I was not in the mood for a big cave delve. I was not in the mood for such a journey, such an adventure. Not yet, anyway. So I ended up heading back towards the cave, towards my cave base, and yeah. Wasn't that long of a trek at all, really. But I was getting low on food, so I figured I'd go ahead and cook some, and I did exactly that. Turned out to be a good idea. But while I was waiting for the food to cook, I decided to go down into the mines, and I noticed there was a cave back here in the cave that I dug through when I made the mine. I decided to go mining, and it was a good thing I did, because I found a bunch of iron down there. A whole lot of iron. There were some twists and turns, a bit of dripstone. I hope I called it the right thing earlier. There was a bit of dripstone to deal with, but there was also some lava. A small lava flow that I decided, you know what? I want to grab this. I can use this for a cobblestone generator later. So I scooped it up and put it away in my inventory. And I went back to mining up iron. I needed to get as much of that stuff as I could, because I needed more gear. Part of why I hadn't been going very far from my base was because I needed armor. I didn't have any armor yet. So iron was going to be invaluable for the near future. And every time I saw even a little bit of iron, I did the best I could to make sure I could get it. And I actually ended up getting a good amount of iron, too. There was really a lot down in that cave. So I kept on delving deeper and deeper, finding more and more iron, dealing with the occasional zombie, and doing my best to avoid falling on any dripstone spikes coming up from the ground. Thankfully, there weren't many of those to get in my way. But I kept digging, kept mining, gathering iron, and, of course, collecting some cobblestone on the side. Kind of an unavoidable fringe benefit, I guess. But eventually I figured I'd gotten enough for the time being and might have actually looted the whole cave's worth of iron. So I went back to the stairway leading up out of the mines and headed up to the cave. Split up the iron as best I could and got it cooking. It was a good thing I picked up that coal earlier, because it ended up being really useful for this. While I was waiting for the iron to cook, I made myself a set of leather boots, so that if I dealt with any powdered snow later, I wouldn't have to worry about it. Then gathered up the iron that was cooked up by that point, and got busy making an extra bucket, since I'd already used up the one for lava, and made myself some iron armor to fill in the rest of my armor spots. My chest plate, my helmet, and of course, leggings. So satisfying to put that on. I also decided it was time to make something that I often make in Bedrock Edition, but hadn't really used much in Java, but something I figured I would need for hardcore, a shield. And figured it was late, so decided to try and sleep. And woke up to a brand new day on day 14. Once again decided to head off along the river and see what there was to see what I could find. But I ended up pulling off at one point, figuring, you know what? Let's get off the river, let's go climb some hills. Let's go get a look around and go explore on land again. Because going down the river one way or the other had seemed to work out okay, but at the same time, it wasn't really leading me anywhere that I hadn't already been. So I decided to climb the hill next to my little shack that led into the cave and see what I could find on the other side of that hill, if anything. But it took a little bit of time to climb up there, I admit. Even had to use my boat to help me get up the hill in a couple of spots. But eventually, I got to a point where I was ready to climb down, and decided to be funny. I used my boat to get down, only to get caught on some trees and have to leg it the rest of the way. The way to where? No idea. I had no clue where I was going, no idea what I was going to find, but I was determined to find whatever there was to find, in whatever directions I was going. And, of course, it put me back on the water along another river. at one point. But hey, that's life and Minecraft. You never know what you're going to find. Everything is unpredictable. But what I found ended up being a big surprise. There was a pillager outpost some distance along that river in a frozen area. And, yeah, normally I try to avoid these guys as best I can, but I figured I was geared up, I was iron armored up, and I had my shield. If I really got into a dicey situation, I figured my shield and my diamond sword would be able to make short work of most of the pillagers, especially if I took them out quick. And I was really glad that I had found this place because I ended up realizing that one of the cages had some allays inside. Yeah, I was really surprised to find these guys, but really glad. It's so rare to find these guys in a pillager outpost. I've only ever seen them really in woodland mansions. So as soon as I saw these guys were here, I decided I need to give these guys some random junk and have them follow me. I double-checked the other cage to see if there was any more, but there weren't, so I decided to head on. Continued to explore in the direction beyond the pillager outpost, looked around the hills, and ended up deciding to take a small detour from going the straight away and just went off to the side, which kind of a common thing, and I ended up climbing up another hill. Seemed to be a common thing for me to climb up hills and trek through the forests. But it paid off. I found a village. And between my little allay buddies and the treasures I was going to find in that village, I'd say I made out like a bandit. This trek here had ended up being really profitable. Maybe I shouldn't call it the last trek, but it did end up being a very profitable trek through the area. I ended up finding a lot of potatoes, saplings, emeralds, logs, things that I was going to need for the future. Even some bread, which bread is always a good thing to have as a backup food. But it started getting late, so I bumped this villager out of his bed and took it over for the night. And then woke up to day 15, ready to face the day and search the village for more treasures. But I ended up going on a hunting spree. Yep, poor pigs. They didn't know what was coming. They had no idea what was coming that morning, but it came, it saw, it slashed them to bits. And even looted the stonecutter out of a mason's house. And went back to looting the village for everything that I could find that I thought might be remotely useful. Of course, any ferns or sweet berries I found, since I already had some of the sweet berries, I got rid of the fern and sweet berries and went on a cow hunting spree next. Oh, man. I wasn't sure how much food I had back at the base, and I knew my food in my inventory was limited, so I figured hunting, not a bad idea. I continued wandering around, just exploring as best I could, and ended up on another body of water, another river, before too long. But, again, I seemed to have some good fortune with rivers and such, and climbing up hills, so that kind of became the big thing of the session, really. But it wasn't long before I started to think, maybe it's about time I start headed towards home. And then, of course, I got sidetracked seeing this cave on this river right over here, and I decided to take a glance inside, but I didn't end up going in because I got nervous. And then I ended up climbing up yet another hill. And, my goodness, like I said, this was a common thing for the session. Climbing up hills and trekking through the woods. Got up to this snowy cap on the hill. Thought maybe I should explore beyond. But I ended up doubling back because I realized, you know what? I'm not ready to do that quite yet. I'm going to head for home. So that's what I did. I started making my way back down the hill and started trekking a long, long way to get back to my house, to get back to my base in the cave. It took a good amount of effort to cross over the trees and through the trees and up and down the hills to make my way, but I started to see some familiar territory as it was getting dark. Of course, it got so dark I had to break out my torches to be sure I could see what was around me. But it wasn't long before I found a familiar stretch of river and realized I was home. Sailed my way into the cave, on my boat, ran over to the chests, and started emptying out my pockets of all the goodies and the loot and everything that I had picked up on my little trek. It was a good haul, too. I mean, you saw how much stuff I put away there. But once I had everything put away, it was time to call it a night for day 15. And that was the session, guys. Episode 3 of the 100 Days Hardcore. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.